I was once, for example, in the late '80s, I was working on a campaign of a woman who was running for assemblyman position in New York. This is when I was a Democrat, and her opponent was a guy who was backed by the mob. She lost to the mob back guy, and then the mob guy lost to a Republican mob guy, and the mob guy, the mob guy who won was a real piece of shit. And when I was outside the polling place, saying vote for this gal, he didn't like the fact that I had said he was a crook and whatnot, and so a few days later I'm picked up off the streets by this guy's goons, and they take me to this place. There was a serial killer named David Berkowitz, the 44 caliber killer back in the 70s, and there was a famous spot that still had the outline of this girl Stacy Moskowitz that he shot, and this was a decade later, and I was taken to this office where I was threatened that if I ever did anything to embarrass this guy in public again, I would suffer the consequences. And he had a guy who was a doctor there who was had been an abortionist when abortion was illegal before it became legal, and now is illegal again. Well, I mean, I could just go on with a lot of these stories.
Yeah, so that made me think of, okay, so one of the things I loved in Tumbleweeds, you have the politician character named John Doe.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it's just because in the grand scheme of things, they're nobodies.
Yeah.
And I thought that just something as simple as that I thought was so good.
Yeah. But
because, like I said, I worked for some politicians, and it is what it is.
And the thing is, the real John Doe, I actually did a play where he was fucking this underage girl and got her pregnant and forced her to get an abortion, even though he was pro-life. And this is a guy who was 35, 40 years older than this girl at the time. So he was a hemophile then, and he's a piece of shit. Now, once he fucking dies, he's close to 100, I think. But once this fucking piece of shit dies, I always was like, well, I'm gonna talk about who he was maybe on my YouTube channel when he dies. But then I'm thinking, well, at this point, does it really matter? Because I mean, yes, historically, if someone asked me, who was John Doe in real life, and he's dead, I'll say it. But do I really want to go out of my way to upset his children, who would say, my dad was never involved with the mafia? Yeah. I know he was, because he picked me up with good. Guys running for a local political position don't have the money to have goons unless they're in someone's pocket.